we're having a great day. First week of April, spring has sprung, and hopefully we're seeing nice weather, and we're going to get the people moving down the road to buying some more houses. Today is going to be a fun day. It is generally the day that people look back at, and if they implement even some of the information here, find it to be extremely helpful and extremely profitable, because we all talk about databasing and we all talk about, the importance of it, but a lot of us don't necessarily have the steps in place to really use a database and grow a database mechanically, and to show us how we're going to make a profit from it. So this is going to be a great session. I'm sure after it's over, this will be one of those sessions you'll go back and review and look at quite a few times. So I'm really excited about today's presentation, and I hope you get a lot out of it. First, what I want to do is I just want to go back and review the homework. You should have by now created your own core group list so that you have at least a list of what it is that you're missing and who it is that you need to collect. Hopefully you're out there every day being aware of every time that you spend money to make yourself known to the people you're spending your money with, and creating a list of possible candidates for your own Merchant of the Month program. Again, it's a great way to get in front of your people and giving them meaningful value on an ongoing basis, so it's not just mortgage information time and time again. If you haven't found enough people to complete your list, we really have to begin the process in earnest of collecting those 9s and 10s from friends and relatives. If you don't have enough people in your database, if you're starting out relatively new in the area, or you've never taken the time to accumulate one, a great place to start is by talking to your friends and family, because those are going to be the people that are going to know good people to be in touch with. So let's start getting on those 9s and 10s and start filling out the list. I also hope that by now you've created a day of focus, at least one for each area of your business. Remember, just getting out there and prospecting 2 hours a day, okay, in each area of the aspect just gives you a huge improvement. A little bit of focus. You can grow your business 50% or more just by being dedicated to following each area of business for that 2 hours a day. And clearly, after the conversation that we had last week and some of the stuff we'll talk about today, hopefully you've read The Attorney Advantage and getting ideas on how to use this powerful group of referral partners to really improve the number of opportunities that you get in front of, both from a client standpoint, but also as a referral partner standpoint. All of this brings us to today. We're talking about our database. Now, a database is a place that we're going to store and we're going to cultivate opportunities, and that is whether they be past clients or people that we know or referral partners, and any possible people that you can collect information on, always. And whether they own or whether they rent, they are an important piece of your business, because they not only have needs about where they live, but people they know will have needs. Because with just a little bit of effort and taking the time to schedule, paying attention to it, your database is going to grow. And it will provide you with business for the rest of your career, and certainly becomes the foundation, the nest egg, if you will, for your retirement. It is important, and we're going to go through this today, of understanding that this information that you accumulate and the way you contact these people and the frequency and the style and the response rates that you get will determine the value of each individual that you have in that database and how much business you've done with them. Now, that all said, we really have to take our time and learn how to fill the database and collect the information that's important. But just collecting the information isn't going to do it. You have to know how to nurture the database, and you have to grow that database into a real business generator. It's almost as if it becomes its own entity. Because having that database and using that database effectively, you will generate business for yourself, and is often the difference between just being an originator, somebody who has to go out there and grab a loan, one at a time, and having a real mortgage practice, being in the business, developing a practice, so to speak, of an ongoing relationship with clients and referral partners. And that's where the money comes from. That's where the real big deal comes from. And we go back and we look at all the principles that we've talked about: fishing versus farming, collecting 9s and 10s, gathering all these. This becomes the place where it all ends up. It becomes like the United States has the Library of Congress, where it stores all the information, anything that comes up, books and data and all those things. Well, this becomes your place. This becomes where you keep everything. Now, let's start off and put you at ease in saying is some of you are going to be more proficient in certain areas of electronic databasing than others. Some people have, very complicated databasing systems that do a whole bunch of things electronically. But what I want you to give the theory of here is what I call the $20 database, because I want everybody to be able to start off without having, you don't have to learn how to have a skill. You don't have to spend a lot of money. You don't have to do any of those things. If you can just put together a cardboard box, some Pentaflex file folders, 31 individual file folders, and about 1,000, and then putting in a number of index cards, whether they be 3.5 by 3 by 5 or 5 by 7, and a pen. We can all do that. The reality that we're trying to look at here is we are looking at how do we put in a system, and whether it's electronic or whether it's physical, I'm going to walk you through the physical. And your electronic system will duplicate or replicate this if you tell it to. Because we have to look back at the systems that we've talked about. So the cardboard box or the computer becomes the storage place where we put in the 12 legal size Pentaflex file folders. Now, each one of those represents each month of the year, January, February through December. And the reason we have that is because we in the mortgage business reflect on our business on a monthly basis. For whatever reason, that's the way it's done. It's the way it has been done. We calculate our monthly revenues and our monthly income, so we're going to track it according to something that is measurable, which is months. It's easy information. More than 31 days in a month, so we've got them all covered. They all represent a day of the month. The index cards are for you to write down the contact information of the people, whether they be clients or whether they be referral partners, as to what, that is the information about that person. And we put it in there to tell us what we're talking about with that person and how we're communicating with that person, and when we have to communicate with that person next. Now, some people will get different color cards. Some will get different color cards for clients and referral partners. Some people get different color cards for the different types of people. You can make that as complicated or as simple as you like. But the point that I'm trying to make is, even if it was just plain old white index cards, the system will work. In a pen, because you never want to track data in pencil because it wears away. So you're writing the name, the address, the contact information of that client and what you spoke about. Now here's how the system works. We're in April. So if we were operating the system today, we're in April, and today is April the 3rd. You would have come into the office this morning, and the file number 3 would have been sitting in front of you in the April file. And behind April would have been May, June, July, all the way through March. And what would happen is you'd pull out that file and you would open it up, and the index cards that were in there would be all the people that you had scheduled to speak to that day. Whether they were a client or a referral partner, these were the people that you needed to speak to on April the 3rd. Now, as you sorted them and you made their contacts, if one of those people you spoke to, you had to speak to again let's say on Friday the 5th. Then you'd write the note on the card, need to speak to the Joneses again on Friday the 5th, remind them about that pay stub to the office, and then I would take that index card after I'd written that note, and I'd go to the file number 5 and drop that card in there. And then I wouldn't worry about that client again. Now suppose I made that phone call today and I don't have to speak to them. They're clients, they're pre-approved, where they're looking at property, but their lease is not up until August. So they're really not going to be making offers on properties until maybe July. I was just checking in with them. It's now April. I don't really want to follow up with them until the middle or the end of June. So I put on there, I look at my calendar, and let's just say I pick June out, and I pick a number, and I say I'm going to speak to them the 18th of June. Well, I would go to June, and there would be no individual days there because all the days are in either April or May. And I would drop that card in the June file, knowing full well that when I got into May and I started adding the file folders 1, 2, 3, 4 into June as those days passed, I would be dropping the cards in the appropriate days to match the days reflective of the time I had to speak to these people. Again, it's very simple. It's very straightforward. You never have to worry about whether or not you are communicating with these people. You will just drop those cards continually when you're going to speak to them. If they're an existing customer and all you're going to do is speak to them once a year, either on their birthday or the anniversary of their closing, those cards will sit in those reflective months until you get to that month, and then you'll separate those cards based upon your schedule as to when you're going to call them. Again, this can all happen electronically. Some of you are using systems that will do this for you. The important part here is to understand that even if you have an electronic system, you need to schedule the next coming event. Because if you don't put into your schedule when you're supposed to speak to them again, how often you're contacting, what's the frequency, what are they getting from me, if there is no plan, then you just have a bunch of names that are sitting there and you're hoping that they remember to call you and refer you, and that won't get the job done. So let's look at this and say we've got about 3 basic groups. And again, this is where sometimes people will use different colored cards to make it easy to find individuals. So let's look at the 3 groups. We have referral partners. Now, those referral partners, they belong in your database, and they are people who are in your group. And again, you could break this down and call this referred people. Again, these your attorney and your financial planner insurance. You can break these groups however you want. You could have 2 groups, okay? You could have 1 group, just everybody. You could 3 groups, again, as I'm laying out here, or 2 groups, either clients or non-clients. But let's just go through these and say, depending on the type of partner and how frequently you need to speak with them, you just need to have them in there that says, this particular group gets spoken to on a certain basis. Some referral partners you speak to more frequently than others, like realtors. Some realtors you're going to want to speak to them once or twice a month. Attorneys, financial planners, insurance professionals, you're probably going to alter that time frame. You're not going to speak to them on a daily basis or a weekly basis. They're not all the same. Some attorneys you're going to speak to monthly, some you'll speak to quarterly. Some financial planners and accountants you may only speak to semi-annually, generally when they're either getting ready to begin their purchase season, like accountants. Always good to speak to an accountant in December as they're preparing to get out their mailing and their information to their clients who are getting ready for their tax season. Always good to have communication with them then. And it's always great to visit an accountant after tax season in either May or June, after they've calmed down, after having done all their tax preparation and all that work. You give them some time to recover and you get in front of them. So if you have certain known times, like again with accountants, May, June, and probably December, always a good time to be in front of your accountants. Financial planners, insurance professionals, hey, if you're an insurance professional, why couldn't you be in touch with them on a semi-annual basis? Working on their homeowners policies, working on their renters insurance policies, one meeting a year would even be good if you could get that done. Your merchants, your service and product providers, all important people because you're going to be asking them for that value-added proposition and working with them at least once a year to get their material in front of your database and help market their particular product or service. Again, you're working your networking groups. If you're working in networking groups and you have 20, 30, 40 people in a networking group, well, then you're going to have to do the point is, if you're not in front of, and this is the biggest challenge with networking groups, is people keep going to networking groups. They keep paying the fee, and they keep waiting and waiting and waiting for those people to refer them. You can't wait for people to refer you. You have to get engaged with each one of those people and get a specific commitment. You're going to commit to taking their product or their service, and you're going to share it with your database, and they need to be in a position to do the same for you. When you focus and you tell people, you'd be amazed at the improvement of the number of referrals you can get when you can just tell people. And you just share with people how you want them to work with you. Now I want to share with you 3 key factors here. And it becomes very important to me that we get a good understanding of this. And I've shared it with all of you before, and I'll say it again. If something isn't written down, it doesn't exist. It means nothing to me if it's not written down. All of you, we've talked about building this book of business. And some of you are doing better than others. And I know this becomes a challenge. But imagine as we've gone through each one of these sessions, your notes, the things that I've asked you to do, the homework assignments, if one by one you were taking those assignments and printing them out and page by page putting them into some plastic page protectors and dropping those protectors into a 3-ring binder, you'd be building that book of business, one piece of paper at a time. It doesn't necessarily happen overnight. It's a process, and it's also something that's going to last you your entire career. You're going to be able to make changes. You're going to get rid of things that no longer work for you. You're going to put in things that now work for you better. You're going to be making adjustments. You're going to have whole new fields of business may open to you that we've never discussed. But it's all going to come back down to having a written plan as to what it is that you're going to do, and that is so imperative. Now, the next part about this is if you don't schedule the activity, it's not going to get done. Trust me, leaving it to your brain that says this is on my task list, or writing it on a task list and having that task list sit on your desk, and you check off a couple things and a few things, no. We want to be specific. Schedule means okay? These are the appointments. There is no such thing as morning or afternoon. There are only the hours on the clock. Because, again, I say something like, well, I'll meet you in the morning. Well, what does that mean? I'll meet you for lunch. When do you eat lunch? Some people eat lunch at 11 o'clock. Some people eat lunch at 3 in the afternoon. Would you want to be sitting in a restaurant for 4 hours waiting for somebody to show up because you didn't know what time they were going to eat lunch? Of course not. You'd have a specific reservation. You'd have a specific time in which you were going to meet. And last but not least, quantification. If you're putting forward an effort, if you've got it written down and you're doing the work, and you don't take the time to quantify the result, if you don't look and see, is what I'm doing generating the result that I have asked for, well, then what the heck am I doing this for in the first place? That becomes the issue here. These three things are immensely important. And you need to understand that we can talk a great game. And anybody can get up there and give a speech or tell people how great you are. But show somebody a written plan. Show them the schedule by which you live. Show them how that you're tracking results. Remember, we talked about this, about the scheduling and keeping score. The reality of all this has to be that if we do not get out there and get in front of people, if we don't get out there and we don't explain to them how we're going to do, so now let's get to the prospect part of your database. Okay, and this will transcend into your referral partners as well. But let's take a look at your prospects. And again, you can create any timeline you wish. I'm giving you examples. So when we look at an A prospect is somebody that's looking either to buy or refinance in the next 30 days. A B prospect is somebody that's planning to buy or refinance in the next 60 to 90 days. A C prospect is somebody that is looking to buy or refinance or is at least 90 days from taking action. These are different people because your system to communicate with them may be entirely the same. In other words, you may have a contact system which says, let's say it's 10 pieces to make it simple. I'm going to send them an initial, when I speak to them on the phone, my initial contact, and then the day that I speak to them, I'm going to send them a written piece of information, or I'm going to send them an email, whatever the case may be. The second step is to follow up with that first communication. The third step is to send them more information, and so on and so on and so on. We have 10 different things that we're going to do during the course of that prospect. Well, if somebody's going to buy or refinance in the next 30 days, wouldn't you want to get all those contacts out in front of that person before they made that decision? So that would mean an A prospect, if you had 10 pieces of communication, you're going to do it about every 3 days. So you're going to have to know that your A schedule is on day 1 I send this, and day 4 I send that, day 7 I send this, day 10 I make this phone call. However your contacts say that you're going to follow up with your people, even if it's just a how you doing phone call, I'm just calling to see how you're doing. That's perfectly fine. That's all it has to be. But those communications have to be every 3 days, or you won't get them all in by the time that person is making a decision. Now, a B client, you've got 60 days. Now, maybe we look at that and say, okay, 60 to 90 days, that's when they're going to react. I may send out something once a week, or I may make a phone call once a week. Why? Because if I have 10 pieces, that's 10 weeks. 10 weeks will get me to that 60 to 90-day window so that I've got all my communications out there in the time frame that I think that they're going to make a decision. Now, client C, again, this prospect is more than 90 days away, and you probably have in your mind how much that's going to be. So even if you sent out something every couple of weeks and then followed up, at that time you ran out every 2 weeks, they went 20 weeks. That last communication is always going to be a phone call. It's always going to be some sort of an interview process to see where they are. Now maybe they're within, striking range. Maybe they've been offset. Maybe they didn't get done what they needed to do, or something didn't work out with their job, or they didn't get that promotion or that raise, or they haven't been able to save the money. Then you can recast your system. But the point is, you need to start with at least the basis of a plan. Now, the key point to all of this is always having the plan that includes scheduling your next step before you move on to your next task. And this is the big black hole of follow-up. The big black hole of follow-up is not scheduling the next thing before you put it away. I don't know how many people finish working on a file or get off the phone with that customer or that referral partner, and then what happens? They fall between the cracks, and you lose sight of them. I see it all the time with loan officers who pre-approve customers. They pre-approve the customer, that per customer's out there shopping for houses, and the loan officer tells me, well, they're going to call me as soon as they find something. I've done this recently. Said, hey, let's take a look. You did this pre-approval, 3 months ago, 4 months ago, and you haven't heard back from this client. Do me a favor. Let's call them on the phone, find out if they bought a house. And the unfortunate part is you make that phone call and you reach that client, and they say, oh, yeah, we closed last month. Oh, yeah, we did this. Oh, yeah, we did that. Oh, yeah, because what happened was is you didn't make it important to yourself. So they didn't think it was important. They didn't see that there was any difference. Because when they went to go see that property that they ended up buying, that person showing them the house, that realtor, had a mortgage person of their very own. And so what happened? Well, it doesn't matter. You got your pre-approval, you use it the offer, but you don't have to use them just because they did the pre-approval. Go to my guy. He'll give you a better deal. And what happens? You never hear from those people ever again, which is why we talk about pre-approvals on Thursday, calling every one of them to find out if they're seeing property. If you don't schedule the task, it's never going to happen. This stuff will not happen by itself, because if it would happen by itself, you'd already be doing it. It takes you to implement. It takes you to schedule. And obviously, it takes you to follow through on the things that you're scheduling. Now, closed clients. One of the things that are going to be in your database are your closed clients. And we need to nurture those people. Just because we close the loan, the relationship is not over. We're a long way from being done. There's a lot of things that we need to do. So here's what we're going to do with those people to stay top of the mind. Again, the more you build your database, and the more these people are receptive to seeing what you're sending them, and the more you keep in touch, the more they remember who you are and that they need to refer you. Now, this doesn't sound like much if you've only got 10 or 20 people in your database. But what happens when this goes to 500, 600, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people? It becomes very powerful. So here's what we're doing is, again, we're using the leverage from the referral triangle. You remember the referral triangle. We talked about the referral triangle earlier. Here's how it comes into action. We take all those other professionals, those 9s and 10s that we're working with, and we get that value-added proposition. Could be a coupon. You can send it electronically so it doesn't even cost you any money. You could film a video and send the video in an email to your people so it doesn't cost you any money. And then all they have to do is print out the email and take it to the place and redeem the value. Could be a letter, could be a postcard. The point is it has to be something. Once a month, we want to drip on them with a value-added proposition. Once a year, we want to do the annual mortgage fitness checkup and identity theft screening. This is a once-in-a-year opportunity to get in front of your people, to update your client information, spend a little quality time reviewing their current deal, making sure everything's working for them as good now as it was when you first did that loan. Because situations can change. Maybe they've added to their family. Maybe people have left the family. Maybe they need more space. Maybe they need less space. Maybe they need equity out of their home. You don't possibly know these changes unless you ask. So the annual mortgage fitness checkup and identity theft screening, I've talked about this with my loan officers, and some are very reluctant to stay engaged. In fact, I've got one loan officer who was so intimidated by it, he fought me for over a year. And he couldn't figure out, he felt like he was intruding on the lives of his referral partners and his clients. And he recorded almost an apologetic video that basically he sent to his people and told them, I'm sending you a letter. It's time to do your annual mortgage fitness checkup and identity theft screening. I know you're very busy, but if it wasn't important to do this, I wouldn't be asking. He sends the video out, he sends the letters out, and he writes 2 to 3 deals a month just because people call in and do the annual mortgage fitness checkup and identity theft screening. He still hates to do it, but he's not going to give up the money because 2 to 3 deals a month, that's an awful lot of business. So understand whether you're mailing a letter or sending a postcard or recording a video, at the very least, send an email, make a phone call, get them engaged into the process. Now, what's really important here is understanding the why of this. And I struggle because I tell people about this all the time, and a lot of times, they really don't believe. And so what I'm talking about here is having a goal and a plan and a schedule and saying, I want to grow my database by a specific number of people. I'm going to do specific actions that grow that. Because to me, I sit here with either little or a few people in my database, and I need it to be a number, 500, 1,000, 3,000, 5,000. However many people that you need it to go to, without a goal and without a plan to reach that goal, you don't have anything. So we have to look at ourselves and say to ourselves, what are we going to do? If we're all starting at zero, and this is just, we're talking about fishing and farming, right? What are the things that I do instantly that can generate me an opportunity? What are the things that I do over time that generate opportunities and referrals down the road? Because the goal always has to be to feed the database, to grow, to add new people to it on a regular basis. Because if you're not looking daily, every single day, to generate new people for your database, I have to ask the question, what are you doing? If you're not adding new people, new contacts, then how are you going to generate new opportunities? You can't just speak to the same people over and over and over again and expect that the numbers are going to get any better for you. Because the number that you're getting from the number that you're speaking to is the number you're going to get. So we have to have specific and non-specific actions so that we're doing things intentionally to ask for referral, and supportively or non-specific actions like providing value to reburn those brain cells. So let's look at this, okay? And this is what I share with new people. People who've never been in the business before, who don't know what they're going to do, I sit there and say, we're trying to bring in new people and show them how to start from zero in the mortgage business to growing it to being a 5 to 7 loan a month machine at the end of 180 days. So here's what we're doing is the goal each month is that we're just going to try to put 25 new people into our database. Okay? Every time, that's all we're trying to do. Now, we're going to, regardless of how we do it, we're going to start out with the people that we know, our own group of people, and we're going to start adding to that database, and we're going to put the people that we start with, all right, which is our own sphere of influence, and we're going to add 25 new people to it, and that becomes the target, and says at the end of 30 days, I will have 350 people in my database. That, again, that's a combination of all the people that I start with, all the people that I know, and then adding 25 new people into that database, is the fact that we're going to sit there and say, how many does that result in? Well, let's face it. Some of the people who are in our database right now, some of the people that we know, friends, family members, associates, all the people that we could put on the list of people that we know, some of them need to refinance and some of them are going to need homes. So as a result of contacting, communicating with those 350 people, we're going to turn around and we're going to pull 10 credit reports. At the end of the first month, that'd be pretty good. Out of those 10 people, let's just say we find 2 pre-approvals and 1 person falls into application. Again, we're not overstressing the system. It's a very small conservative estimate. Well, then we improve the database, and at the end of the second month, we've got 450 people in our database. We've pulled 20 more credit reports, which means there's 30 total. We did 4 credit pulls. We've got 6 pre-approvals total. We write another application, gives us 2 applications total. And we will have closed 1 loan at the end of 60 days. And you can see the mathematical progression. We grow it, we grow it, we grow it. The numbers start to grow. Why? Because in months 3, 4, 5, and 6, some of the people we talk to in 1, 2, and 3 start coming back to us. At the end of 180 days, we're in a position where we're pulling 6 applications each month. And we're talking about pulling 5 closed loans. The end of 6 months, all you have to do is set a target, aim at it, and grow it. So I talked a little bit about the wedding of the party list. And so when I sit here and say, in every new sales position, okay, in every sales position that it is, you always want to start with the people that you already know. And I tell people, I don't suggest anybody hires anybody that can't generate a list of 150 to 200 names, addresses, phone numbers, and email addresses. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, here's the thing, the wedding of the party list. Where do these people come from? Well, you know people. Look at your email contacts. Look at your Facebook friends list. Look at your LinkedIn connections. There are people out there who have thousands and thousands of Facebook friends, or hundreds and hundreds of connections on LinkedIn and others. You start growing that list and make sure that you're using the 9s and 10s script to locate other people. Clearly, ask them about their 9s and 10s. Follow your money where we're spending it. We're collecting those people as well. It really doesn't take long, once you get this thing going, to really have an effective and scheduled contact and communication with people. Because, again, it becomes very simple. You get used to doing it on a daily basis. So let's talk about this. Week 1, we go out into the world and we trade 10 business cards with 10 business cards of people that we've never met before, okay? Just 10 on 10. We get out there, we trade 10 cards. We do that every day. Now, I don't care if they could be associated with groups or people you meet on the street. Doesn't matter to me. You just need to introduce yourself and exchange a minimum of 10 business cards. Now, you take those 10 each day, and you pull the first 10 people off your wedding list. And you send out 20 cards, letters, or emails to the first people in your database. You're making 20 outbound attempts. That becomes important, and I'll show you why. Because you're going to schedule a follow-up call a week later. Because in week 2, you're going to repeat the process you did, but then you're going to add those 20 follow-up phone calls from the mailing you sent, or the email that you sent, or the video that you sent. And you ask very simple questions. Did you get the card or the letter, or the video, or the email, whatever it was you sent? Collect their 9s and 10s. Ask them the question, who do I know that, who do they know that I need to speak with? And then next, when are you going to speak to them again next? Next week, next month, next year. It takes 30 seconds to 3 minutes for you to make that call. Now, if you leave a voicemail message, you're going to follow your normal follow-up routine. Remember we talked about 3 times in 3 days, once a week for 3 weeks, then once a month for 3 months. Your typical follow-up situation. I suggest that you put it in here. The reality of it is, what does it do? It gets you used to scheduling these calls and making these calls. It creates a discipline for you to make a certain number of phone calls every day so that you're getting in front of opportunities. Because that's one of the disciplines that's missing, is the requirement to know that we have to reach out and do this stuff every day. Week 3 and 4 is the same as week 2. We're going to do the same thing. But at the conclusion of week 4, you're going to have 400 contacts in your database, all with scheduled follow-up times. 400 people, 1 month. How many of those people need a loan? How many of those people need to think about refinancing or buying a house? You're not going to know if you don't ask. Now, week 5, we get a little more specific. And I tell people, we're going to head out at 10 o'clock in the morning like every other day, but this time we're looking to meet 10 people. That's a potential referral source, whether it be a realtor or a financial planner or an accountant, I don't care who, but schedule your day to go meet those people. Now, remember those 400 people that we begin speaking to? We've already collected 9s and 10s. Could be some of those people. If you don't have any referral partners, it's now the time to go out and get them. But we're going to go out there and we're going to keep adding, again, 10 people each day. And understand that in week 5, that's 50 people that you're going to add to the other side of your triangle, which is your other professionals. By the end of week 5, you've got 250 new people in your database that you didn't have before, and each week you're going to continue to add 50 people over the next 20 weeks. In 6 months, you're going to have a minimum database of 1,250 people. It's amazing. And you're going to start making 10 live visits every day. You're going to go back and visit the people, whether they be realtors or financial planners or accountants or whatever, into your system that you're going out and you're trying to visit these people. You're still going to be on the phone making these phone calls. Probably 20, maybe 30 people a day. Now, it becomes a habit. It doesn't take as long as you think. In fact, you're going to have a lot of extra time in the very beginning because, again, you're only starting at 10 o'clock and coming back, around noon, 1 o'clock, because it doesn't take long to get in front of 10 people. But you've got that whole afternoon. Well, that's going to be important. You're going to need that time because that's when you're going to start doing business. Now, let's take a look and understand this formula. You have to understand a number of contacts represents what's the value for each contact and the frequency. And that'll tell you what the value of your database is. So for an example, if you've got 1,000 people in your database and 25 of those people need a loan and some of the other people in your database will refer you other people in your database that they know because you've stayed in touch with them. That's 40 units. That's not a big thing to think about. Getting 1,000 people and staying in touch with them once a year and doing this contacts to build, it would be virtually impossible not to generate 40 transactions. If you're only making $1,500 a unit, and again, I don't know what your compensation plan is, and I don't know what the average loan size is, but you got to be looking at, if you're making $1,500 a unit, that's a $60,000 event, your database, one part of your triangle. If there are 3 sides to your triangle and you're getting $60,000 out of your database, if you could do the same on the other 2 sides, you'd be making $180 grand a year. That start to come into focus for some of you? Now I want to give you, because I know a lot of you are thinking to yourselves, yeah, well, that's easy to say, blah, blah, blah. Well, I want to give you a real, actual circumstance, and it's amazing because this is now the 2nd anniversary of this person being in the business. It's almost 2 years ago that I went down to Louisiana and a 37-year-old woman was sitting in a training class who was invited to come there because the manager of that particular branch thought that she would make a great loan officer to be in the mortgage business. And so I was going there to do a training for the rest of the LOs in that office, and this woman was there. And so she went to the training, and she was asking a bunch of questions, and I asked her to get involved, and I asked her to trust the system, because the system has never not worked. Anybody who's applied the principles and done the work has seen the results. Well, in April, she passed her licensing test, and she started in May and closed her first mortgage loan. Actually, she closed two. She closed 2 loans in her first month. By December 2011, she had closed more than 50 units and had more than 41 approved buyers looking for homes. Now, I'll pass that along further and say, in her first full year in the business, she closed 140 units. And she's rated number 14 in the Scotsman Guide nationally of doing rural development loans. She is in her second full year right now as we speak. And in 2013, she will close more than 200 units. And as of March, last month, she closed 20 units in March, which the resulting commissions will turn out to be more income than she would have made in a year at her prior job. That's the zero to hero. So your homework. Here's what I need you to really get involved in. Again, there's too much money here for you not to be engaged, okay? There's too much not for you to be able to do. Is what kind of databasing system are you going to use? What's your plan going to be to fill it? How will it grow continuously? When have you scheduled to do the work? What day of the week or days of the week are you committed to doing the things that you need to do to put new people into that database and provide value to the people who are in there? What values will you provide to your people? How are you going to go about bringing that value? How will you get the value to them? Again, who are the people? Are you going to use video? Are you going to use email? Do you want to use postcards? Do you want to use letters? Do you want to use flyers? Obviously, some of these are more complicated and contain more expense than others. But the point here is you have to have a vision. You have to know where you want to go and the increments by which you're willing to travel. If you can't commit at least 1 day a week and 2 hours of that day to your database, you're not going to have a meaningful system. You're also doing yourself a great disservice. Because I will tell you, as the years go by and as the numbers grow, you will find that an increasing number of loans and opportunities that you get in front of will be coming from your database. Now, I say this with real conviction onto the fact that you have to know that the better you build this database, the more impactful you are with the value that you send to your people. The more the people that refer you, the higher the value each client is in that database, because as I told you before, when the time comes to retire from the mortgage business, wouldn't it be nice to have something to sell somebody? Wouldn't it be nice if you had this database that you could look at that says, I get X number of transactions per year from my database? How many rookie or new, less established loan officers would love to be able to have the business of coming in here and buying your database. It happens in the insurance business all the time. It happens with attorneys. It's amazing how many practices have these databases, these clients, and they sell them. Why can't you do the same thing? And the answer is, of course you can. If you have built a database and you have built trust in the system, you can sell that system to someone else. All it will take will be an introduction from you to that new person. Here is the new person. We're retiring. We're moving on. We appreciate your business. Here's the one that's taking my place. Now, not everybody is going to build that relationship with them, but enough of them will. So please understand, this homework, just like all the other homework sessions, are incredibly important. I can't have you thinking that this is, again, just another one of those things that you can leave to just your company or your manager, or I'll get to it later. Because without the focus of building a database, you don't have the focus of making contact, and you don't have the ability to provide value to the people you already know. And without that, every day at work is just a series of asking for business and begging for business from people. And that's really a hard way to make a living. I had a loan officer I spoke to this morning, and he's very productive. He's going to do between $30 and $40 million worth of business this year easily. And he came into the office on Monday, and he had 6 new loan applications. 6 of the people that he was working with that he either pre-approved to go out and buy a house, or people that he had spoke to about refinancing had sent him the paperwork. He had brand new work to do. What a nice way to start the week. Would you like that to happen every Monday? I'm sure I would. And again, as I've told you before, if you need help, please just ask. Send me an email. Go into the website and use the tools. They're all in there on the client side. They're all there for you to use. If you need to go back and replay some of the sessions, go back and replay the sessions. Take notes. If you're still unsure, if they're not covered in the e-books, if you can't find it in the tutorials, send me an email. Let me walk you through it. I want for you guys to succeed. Whether it happens today or tomorrow or down the road is not important. Yes, it would be nicer if it happened sooner, but it's not going to happen if you don't start. I appreciate your time and your dedication to the process. This is the 9th of 10 sessions. We have one more, and I look forward to sharing the final session with you next time we get together. Be safe and be sound, and go out there and do some loans. Have a great day.